Alright gang, what is up? Welcome back for another week's video. This week I'm talking about the new Jackson Kayak Antix 2.0 and the first look and kind of the comparison to the Antix 1, which Katie Kowalski has let me use hers for this video. Before we get started with some similarities and differences, I'm going to be showing you some side-by-side video clips of Antix 2 versus Antix 1. It's not an apples for apples comparison because the Antix 1 I have here is a small and my Antix 2 is a medium. So just keep that in mind. The size is different a little bit, so that will account for some of the differences we're looking at. And full disclosure, I'm kind of sponsored by Jackson Kayak, and although they're not paying me to make this video, I do receive a discount on my boats. You should consider that in all the reviews that you see for new boats. So full disclosure, I still pay for my boats, but I pay a lot less than the retail price, and that's like kind of my kickback for being sponsored or whatever. So do keep that in mind. All right, moving on. So let's look at these boats side by each, and we'll look for some of the main differences here. I'm actually going to turn the microphone around here. Okay, so looking here side by each at the Antix 1 versus the Antix 2, we got some pretty key differences. Now, like I said, not the same size-wise, but length-wise, the Antix 2 on the right here is a little bit longer. Obviously, it looks much longer because this one's a small, but the 2 is actually just a few inches longer than if I was comparing a medium to a medium. That extra length is awesome because it makes it paddle a little bit faster. It kind of skips out a little bit better and it just carries speed a little bit more. It feels a bit less like a slow potato and a bit more, just more speedy, which is really great. Some of the key differences, and we're going to start at the bow, start in the rocker profile. So if we look at it side on, we can see that there is quite a lot more bow rocker. That's the rocker right there in the front, that banana shaping, versus the Antix 1, which has like a lot more of a flat, kind of less bow rocker shape. And you'll see it side by side. You can see how on the side by side the 2 sticks up, the bow of the 2 sticks up a lot more than the 1. That just means that it's much easier to lift up for booths, lift up onto rocks for like rock spins and stuff. Much easier to lift up over waves and lift up to get over eddy lines, and just make it a lot easier and kind of user friendly to paddle, which is really, really awesome. Moving down the kind of like side profile of the boat, we got kind of a pretty significant change in the hull shape. Like it's full planing instead of having a rocker brake behind the seat. So we're looking along the bottom there for that rocker profile, that kind of like banana shaping that goes under there. That's going to affect how the boat surfs. This one's a lot flatter, you'll see, than the Antix 1 because of that planing hull. That means it surfs a lot better. It's a lot more fun for spins and for getting onto waves, even really, really small waves that you don't think you'll be able to surf. This boat surfs them really well. And because it's a little bit longer, like we just talked about, that also means it's a bit faster, which means you can catch kind of greener, flatter waves. So often waves that you wouldn't be able to catch in Antix 1 or in a freestyle boat, you can catch in this boat, which is really fun. Moving along to the stern, you can see that the stern of this boat, let me see if I can turn the old exposure down a little bit. You can see the stern of this guy sits a lot lower down than the Antix 1, and that's kind of partly to do with that rocker that we just talked about, how they flattened out a little bit. And what that means is it's actually much easier to stern squirt than having such an aggressive kicked up stern tail. Like even on the side by side there, you can see that even though the boats we're comparing are not the same size, the Antix 1, the stern kicks up a lot, and the Antix 2, it stays down, right? So what that means is this Antix 2 is actually much easier to get the stern under the water, and just kind of a little more simple. The Antix 1, it wasn't too bad to get the stern under the water, but what I always found was you had to crank it more like a freestyle kayak. You had to really crank a lot of edge and really thrust into it using a lot of core power. With the Antix 2, I find you don't have to do that as much. You just kind of glides right under there. You can hold that edge kind of smooth and consistent and let it drip down. One of the big changes is that kind of hump right behind the seat there. You can just see that kind of the love bump. Allegedly that makes it easier to stay in a stern stall once you're up there. I've been in some Stern stores. I wasn't sure I noticed the difference, but that doesn't mean I wasn't noticing the difference. I didn't feel it, but that doesn't mean it's not working. It just means I wasn't aware of it, or I wasn't looking for it, which actually might be good because it means that it's happening without you thinking about it, which is ideal. Next important key differential is knee position. Your knees are kind of a little bit higher and a little bit narrower in this boat, which is tons more comfortable. Antix 1 used to be kind of, your knees were in an awkward position and it was super uncomfortable, I found. Antix 2, really comfortable, like easy to stay in for a long period of time. I dig it, it's awesome. Minor changes noticeable, obviously grab handle orientation changed over here. If you care about that, I don't think it makes a big difference, but whatever. Yeah, like I said, knee position's better. New seat, so you know, cooler looking, which I like. Obviously both got the sponge. And then because of, let's just see if we can get the old camera in here. So the same Unishock bulkhead system that all the Jackson like kind of creek boats have. Really easy to adjust and really quick. One of the things I really liked about this one versus the Antix 1 was because your knees are in a better position. It gives you a little more kind of foot space just because of the angle that your feet are at, and the extra bow volume just because the bow is a bit longer gives you a little bit more foot room too, which is really good. So I can still wear my like kind of regular creaking shoes in there, fit pretty comfortably without having to take out the foam bulkhead piece on the footrest, which is really great. Antix 1, I did find that was not the case. Also slightly narrower in the stern. You can see here, again, this is a medium, this is a small, but you can see how the stern is slightly narrower here and that's slightly wider there. This makes the stern a little bit easier to go under the water, I find, on the Antix 2 versus on the Antix 1. Okay, shoulder carry test. Antix 1 never used to fit on my shoulder very nicely. It was always like off balance, and like when you put your hand inside on the handle, like this on the stern pit, the front wall pillar, it just never really sat very well on my shoulder. This one sits a lot better, feels nice and balanced on my shoulder, which is a good sign, a good start. Definitely one of the things I didn't like about Antix 1, so happy to see that's resolved. So that's what the boats look like kind of side by side. Remember, like I said, we're not comparing apples to apples because the Antix 1 we're comparing here is a small, but you can see the changes, or hopefully you can see the changes as I'm explaining them. I've been paddling this boat now for about a week, so not that long, but I'm really enjoying it, which I didn't think I would. I liked the Antix 1, but it was like, it was so-so for me. I quite often felt when you were surfing, it never quite achieved that like planing feel that a freestyle kayak gets to. I always felt kind of like a little bit stuck on the back end. The new boat, I don't feel like that. It's planing all the time. It's much more fun to surf. It's much more fun to hit eddy line tricks on. It took me a minute to figure out getting my stern under like just the right angle, but once I figured it out, I've been having a ton of fun with that, which is really great. And the extra bow rocker, again, it's a small thing I didn't think I would care about, but it makes it so much more fun to paddle. It's so much more fun to lift your nose up and kind of boof into holes or boof over waves and go through eddy lines. It makes the whole experience much easier. It's like a lot of the feeling you get from like the front end of a Nirvana or a Zen 3, but then with a fun, playful back end. So it's actually great. I'm using it a lot more than I was expecting to. And yeah, on the whole, I'm really enjoying it. It's really fun. I feel like I said that a lot this review, but yeah, this is kind of my first impressions. Antix 2.0. Hopefully we'll see more of these out on the river soon. You'll get to try one at your local dealer or local wherever you kayak. But yeah, that's kind of been my first impressions, first look at the Jackson Kayak Antix 2. I will see you next week. Peace.